Welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm your host, Charlotte Stebbing-Mills, and today I'm joined by Nadine Schwarz, who is a transformation coach, founder of Holistic Elements, and known for running the Sacred Sisterhood community, which is obviously a women's circle here in Dubai. I'm very excited to have you on the show, Nadine. Nice to see you. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me.
I think this is going to be an excellent conversation. What you do and the topic of this episode today is very, very close to my heart and my journey. So I'm really curious as well to really dive into some of these topics because I think it's much needed. And I think that I'd had somebody like you probably a little bit earlier in my life. So before we jump in to kind of the main kind of like meat of the episode, I'd love for you to share a bit more about yourself so myself and our listeners can get to know you a little bit better. And I really love this question of, if we were a fly on the wall as you were kind of growing up and throughout your life, what would we have seen that's led you to do what you do today and led us to see you in your essence of who you are today?
That's a beautiful question. So I would start maybe with my childhood, as it's a really important fact. I was a lonely child and actually kind of like a miracle child, I would say. My parents tried to have a child for more than 15 years. And when they finally gave up, I happened. So my
Amazing.
mom became me when she was 43. And I was, of course, really welcomed. I was always the sunshine, and I brought so much light to my grandparents and to my parents, which was nice at the one side. So I was literally a child that was there, really wanted, and my parents wanted to have for me the best. I was able to experience a lot of things like learning instruments, dance classes here and there. So I had really a lot of opportunities. Yet from the outside, the fly might have thought, wow, this is a childhood, this is amazing. But when you look behind, there is still something. And I was like, when I started my coaching training years ago, I was the first time ever really taking time for myself to reflect. What happened? What happened in my childhood? How was it? How did I get from A to B? And so I figured that in my childhood, yes, I was really gifted, but on the other hand, I had to face as well. My parents were often kind of like battling. My father had a really tough job. He was basically never home because he was working for the family to make everything happen for me in a way, which is amazing, right? But on the other hand, he was not present. And that's where I figured, wow, a father wound came up. I was like fully up with inner belief systems like I'm not enough because my father is not there. I might not be really loved. I'm not good enough. And my father conditioned me a lot. He never did that on a bad purpose. I know that. But the thing is that I had the feeling I have to perform a certain way to be able to be loved. So I grew up as a child, always being good in school, being friends with everybody, trying to make everything possible, being good in playing the clarinet, dancing, everything, like a miracle child in a way. But I was running to become better, a better version of myself, and just being, whatever my father or my mom wanted me to be. That ended with me graduating school and then kind of like, oh, I would love to become an actress. Because I was acting in school and I really loved being creative. But then my dad said, actress, money, that doesn't really sound perfect. So maybe you should study something, get a safe and secure job and everything. And I'm like, okay, so well, then I take it as a side. I do it as a hobby. I still thrive. I dance as well. It's okay. I'm going to study. So I studied international management. I was really a really good student, did a bachelor's degree, and did everything what my family kind of like wanted from me. And I had fun in that. I saw as well, I'm really good in organizing and planning. I have a lot of good skills, when it comes to that. But at the end of the university, I was like, okay, what is now the next step? What should I do? I guess a lot of people ask the same question after they finish university. What is the next step? And so I was like, okay, half a year I was traveling a little bit and working as a bartender and whatever. And then I said, okay, maybe it's time to get a job right now. So I went into project management, as I knew I'm good in organizing, planning, and, so I went into a big corporate company where I was actually for 8 years battling, being good, running, chasing the next goal, being as good as the other man, I would call it, and being triggered a lot. And we can come to that later. And then after some time, I figured out this is not everything. This cannot be my whole life. I did a master's degree on the side as well. So I was working full time, did a master's degree in the UK and Germany in international event management, because I thought maybe a little bit more creativeness could help me out. So events are creative, but I ended up never getting there. I did my master's, amazing, done. But then I was like, okay, this is not everything. So I started a coaching training 8 years ago, and that was literally for me the door opener in a way, as I really asked myself some questions that I never asked myself before. Where does this all come from? Who am I actually? Because I did not know who I am. People or colleagues of mine, close female colleagues of mine, sometimes told me, Nadine, you act so differently in company and at home when we're just friends. Who are you actually? What kind of mask are you wearing? And that was for me a breaking point where I was like, who am I? Am I just chasing a dream from somebody else? Or am I becoming a man in a way because I'm so chasing, running, being independent, just I don't need a man, And on the other hand, the fly would say, wow, she was thriving in business, reaching like management goals, having a secure job, what her father always wanted. She is like, wow, this is the boss babe in a way. But on the other hand, seeing me not succeed at all in any relationships, loving relationships. I had so many toxic relationships from one to another, from emotional abuse to physical abuse to, and I didn't see that, I was like just going in there fully with my open heart, always giving, because there was this lack of, I'm not complete, so I need something else to make me complete. And whatever it is, I have to be a certain way that the for example, is accepting me. I was like, wow, that took a long time. And in this coaching education, I figured there are patterns that were placed in my early childhood, that I was reaching this kind of points and I'm actually losing myself. So my self-discovery journey started, I would say, 8 years ago with my coaching training. After that, I started a yoga teacher training because I just literally wanted to understand what is out there, and the universe opened the doors, literally. And then from there, I started to work with shamans as well. I started to do energetic work. I went into plant medicine journeys, and that's when I figured the key essence is actually to understand who are you for real in your life, what is your purpose in life, and on the other side, as a woman, what kind of energies are present right now in your life, what is wounded and what is healthy. And as that saying at the end, we as human beings, we always have feminine and masculine energy in us. It is about the balance and the alignment of each one of us to thrive with both energies present in a healthy way. And that's what the fly could see, why I am right now here creating safe spaces for especially women, because I'm representing the divine feminine, which means I'm healing in the masculine and feminine part of myself to be able to help the women to have a safe space where they can express their wounds, their feelings, their thoughts, topics that they normally don't talk about, so that they find their own balance.
Nice. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I think it's always interesting to give context as to like the personal side of somebody's now profession, because I think in this industry, if you like, it's I think it plays a huge part in then what not only our listeners can expect, but in what we get access to. And I think when we get to hear it firsthand, I think it helps to piece some of these breadcrumbs together sometimes, especially if people are a bit earlier on in the journey. So You work a lot with like leaders, particularly female leaders now, don't you? And it makes sense as to why that's the case. But before we jump into kind of like how you help them and really breaking down what these masculine and feminine wounds are and what healthy looks like, I'd love to know if you begun to balance those masculine and feminine energies whilst you were still in your role that you was in within your organization, because that was obviously like the pivotal moment and that awareness coming in, that was where there was a lot of incongruence perhaps. So what was that part of the journey like?
Yeah. So the pivotal moment was actually I got so fed up with the corporate, as I was there as a woman, always trying to thrive, to be better than every masculine counterpart of mine, as there was a disbalance. And I figured there is no way, in a way, with if I'm using the wounded masculinity to succeed, it's not gonna work. But I didn't understand at that time that it was the wounded masculine talking inside of me. So through my coaching training, I saw as well, it's maybe not the best environment for me to be employed. So I said, okay, maybe there has to be another step. I would like to help as well, more than just one company where I'm employed. So I said, okay, maybe it's the time of having my own company to be able to help more companies at once and more leaders, and to be able as well to thrive as I am, because in the companies, when you are employed as a coach, the trouble what I was facing all the time was, you are seen as an internal person, you are part of the system, you can't just change up to the hierarchy that is above you, because the hierarchy, of course, you have to kind of like be submissive in a way, so you cannot change completely. So I said, I'm limited in my power, and people that are working with me are not really listening, because I had one occasion actually in in one of my companies that there was some external coach coming onto my project talking exactly the same things that I did. They were listening to him. I was saying the same things, but I was like, she's internal, she's like just internal coach, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, this has to end. This has to end. And that's when I said, okay, the next step is for me finding out how I can start my own company in a way. And I had a big inner belief that hindered me. That was from my father's side, because my father and my mom, they were born in the Second World War. As I'm a very like a child that was, all parents, they were literally born at the end of the Second World War. So their values are safety and security, because in their childhood, they were literally fighting for survival, for basic needs. So the most important thing was have a safe environment, a safe job. Don't quit a job that is safe, which is not safe, but for them it was safe. So I was not really able to get away from that and start my own company. I did that all by myself on the side, and still had this security on the other side, which is fine. I would not really recommend people to say from one day to another, when they have a job, from now and tomorrow I am completely self-employed, I have my own company, yada yada yada. That could work, but it's okay as well to prepare a little bit, to try it out on the side, and when you see that it's starting and working, then put more energy into it, and then let the other thing go. So that's what I was doing as well. And for me, kind of like the real point that switched my life was when my father passed away. 6 years ago. It was really quick, and it was literally happening from one day to another, that I was sitting at his bed in hospital, where he literally was like in 5 hours gone. But I was able to sit there and hold his hands and just be there present. And it was, for me, I would say, the first spiritual awakening that I had, because I saw how I was able to calm him down with me just talking, giving him the energy of the universe, and literally helping his soul to evolve. And that was, for me, at that point, I couldn't really understand it, but it was like such an opening, that I was able to help this soul just to live in peace. And for me, it was a liberation as well, because after that, I said, okay, that was him, that was not me. I am able to do this on my own. I can have my own company. And then I just opened my company in Germany. I had my clients, it all worked out. And the next part was literally for me when I decided to move in 2022 to Dubai, as I said, okay, now I need to really prove it to myself that I can do it all by myself, because I was still really close to my mom in a way. She is super loving and I love her to that, you know. But it was the other extreme. My father was not present, my mom was super present, and she was putting so much love onto me that I was like feeling in a cage and I couldn't breathe. And that was the case when she was literally every time overstepping my boundaries. And so it was normal for me. And that was another thing what was happening in my relationships. For me, it was normal overstepping boundaries, and that my boundaries are constantly overstepped because this is love.
Yeah.
Which is
That's a really interesting insight. So I think there's two things from that. One of the reasons why I asked that question is because what is common to see now more than ever is a lot of women leaving leadership positions, leaving senior positions, because they now know that they can set up on their own. They can essentially create the life they want, where they can be in charge of their life, right? In charge of their work, in charge of their time, so they can be with family or do the things that they love and enjoy. And that's leaving companies in a very sticky situation for sure, right? Which is why now there's a lot more emphasis and a lot more support going into women at work, which is excellent, and I'm super happy to see this shift that's occurring. But I think it's taken a lot of women, just like you, like myself, to step out of that bubble and say, hang on a minute, something doesn't feel quite right, there's some disconnect. How do we actually start to resolve this? The second thing that I think is super interesting, I was having this conversation with somebody only earlier today about how when we are faced with mortality, whether it's own or our own or somebody else, particularly somebody we're really close to, this incredible sense of awakening happens, but there's a shift and there's this sudden like bomb of awareness that occurs, right? And almost a little bit out of nowhere. So I find it very interesting that you almost had those two things coinciding in relatively, when you look at the whole of life, like a short period of time. I know there was some years involved there, but it's not something that just happens overnight. So could you share more for our listeners about, just define what is masculine energy, what is feminine energy? It just in case it's the first time somebody's hearing that, and then we can go into wounded and healthy and unpack that.
Yeah, so the masculine energies are literally the traits that are represented with the masculine sides. And I would like to explain that as well with the wounded and healthy, because that's easier to understand then. It's just literally we both have feminine and masculine energy inside of us, but there are qualities behind. And these qualities are often wounded. As I mentioned, you know, it's rather wounded through father wounds or mother wounds, or even, you know, other wounds that are just evolving during our childhood. Or it could come as well, if you believe in past lives, it could come from there as well.
Yep.
So to just make better examples, to present wounded masculine features in us. And I had a lot of wounded masculine features in my life. So maybe one more thing is as well, if you are a woman, you don't have to be more present in your feminine energy. You could be as well more present in your masculine energy, and it could be a healthy masculine energy, and this is totally fine. These are the women who are literally the leaders, the role models in the way, you know, creating a lot, and this is a lot in the masculine power, which is fine. For example, Sarah Al-Madani, she is really a woman who reached so many levels, breaks so many patterns, but she has a strong masculine side, but she brought it in balance, and this is fine. So wounded masculinity was I experiencing when I entered the corporate, and I thought I have to play the game, you know, I have to play the game. And this is already one wounded masculine thing, is the competitiveness, but the toxic competitiveness. I have to be better than somebody else. This is masculinity when it's wounded, because we cannot understand that we can coexist. We have to be the leader. There is no other than me. On the other side, this comes with controlling behavior of yourself and you want to control as well your environment because you are fear driven.
Yep.
Fear driven means I'm acting out of the feeling of lacking something. And this is then I try to control my environment, because as long as I can control it in a way, I feel safe.
Yep.
So this is wounded. As a wounded masculine, and this is as well, if you are a man, this is the same, you know, these are the same traits.
Yep.
So I said already competition and emotions. Emotions is the next thing. You are tuning out of your emotions when you're a wounded masculine, because emotions, they can hinder you. They can hinder you from thriving. And so I try to not tuckle in with my emotions and literally become this man who is literally just chasing. And this is another thing, toxic and wounded masculine. I'm chasing goal after goal. This is not healthy driven. This is chasing. I need to achieve something else to be accepted in society. And this gives me always the instability, because it's never enough. It's never enough, because if I reach that one, there is already the other one. So I'm like, okay, I reached that, happy. No, I'm actually not happy, because I see already the other thing. So it's running.
Yeah.
This is a lot toxic masculinity. And then on the other side, when we go to the feminine wounded side, is when you are, for example, in your victim mentality, when you are standing up and saying all the time, why is this just happening to me? Nobody else is suffering like me. It's like, I'm so poor, you know, I don't know. Nobody else has this life. Because I'm oversensitive. I'm taking everything super personal. And that was for me in the job situation as well. I drifted from wounded masculine to wounded feminine, because at one point I got so offended that I was literally in tears. Tearing up in front of people in my team, because I was so misunderstood and I felt so victimized, because I'm the poor girl who just wants to be part of everything, but I'm unloved. Unloved because I was not able to give myself the love. This is the thing when you want to heal. So wounded femininity, sensitive, victimized, needing. And this leads me to codependency, where I went into the toxic relationships because I needed something. I couldn't give it to myself. I'm always on the look. Outside there is the love, outside there is everything. So I need you to give me something so that I feel complete.
Exactly.
This is so deep. And then on the other side, I feel powerless, because I am not in my power. I'm just this little girl who is not loved. So how should I create something out of that? It's as well the fear state, you know. And then you could get into hysterical states, you know, having mental breakdowns. Luckily, I did not have that, but that could happen. You could try to manipulate as well. That is another toxic trait. I didn't go into that, but a lot of women try to manipulate men, you know, to be able to get what they want. And this is toxic behavior. When you are understanding that, and I would say the first part of your healing journey always starts with observing your own behavior.
Before we jump into the kind of the healing side of it, I want to talk perhaps a bit more about like, how do we end up with those wounds? Because I think that's an important piece of the puzzle. And it was a really important part for me, understanding myself and almost like, how did I get to that point? And for me, it was very much a case of protection, right? And I think to some extent, that's probably a part of the root for everybody. But for me, it was being in a household that was unpredictable, a bit dysfunctional. Immediately there was like a shell come up around me, right? And then there were other incidents along the way, from sexual trauma, physical trauma, things like that just helped me like create this more of a shell. When I was then in school, I was always like the sporty one, wanting to play sports. So most of the people that I was around were guys. And then there's that constant thing. And then I was in an industry that was heavily male dominated. So I was like constantly in that environment. And what I didn't know at the time is like, that was just serving me perfectly, because it was feeding into my wounds, right? And it was like the life that I then created was in my mind at the time, probably balancing me out. I didn't know that I needed balancing, right? But it was like the reality that I created completely unconsciously fed into those wounds. And it wasn't any one person's fault, or it was purely just me absorbing this energy, my subconscious, my energy body knowing what it needed to do at that time, which then compounded created then beliefs and behaviors. And it was only when I got to a point where I think my feminine energy was knocking on the door saying, hey, like something needs to give here, and then breakdown happens, right? And then it was like all of a sudden I've got all of these emotions. It's like, well, what is this? I got to the point where I wanted to take my own life, and I was in this cocktail of emotion, and it was jarring for me because I didn't know what that felt like, because I'd buried it so much from these wounds. And I mean, not everybody's experience is exactly like that, but I think understanding, for me at least, that shell was being reinforced year after year after year, incident, moment after another moment, that's who I thought I was. So I didn't know that I had feminine and masculine energy. Like, nobody ever taught me that. It was only when later, or after, like the healing begins, right? And then you're like, oh, that's why, and the penny drops. But I'm curious to know from your side, like, what are some of the other ways in which these wounds can occur that perhaps are a bit different to what I've explained?
Yeah, I can so much relate to what you just said because I've been through almost everything what you just mentioned. For me, it happened as well in my childhood when my mom came to me and she literally told me after a fight with my dad one night that I'm the only reason why she is still here.
Mm.
So I created upon that sentence. She just wanted me to know that, I'm a reason why she's still living in a way. And she meant it in a good way. But what I created out of that was, oh, wow, I'm hindering my mom from being happy. So why do I deserve love?
Yeah.
And that was the craziest inner belief I put into my system. And from that on, I created moment after moment that attracted exactly that inner belief. I'm not worthy of having love, healthy love. And I'm actually always have to run after more and more because I'm never enough. So
Mm.
I attracted, as you said, I was bullied actually in school because I was the tiny little girl that was not yet in her puberty. All my friends were already like, I don't know, looking like women. I was looking like a little girl. And the guys, they put me in a trash, for example. And I let that all pass, I just was like, okay, do it, it just made me stronger in a way. But
Yeah.
yet it wounded me as well because I saw how they treat me, and I was like, boo, this was another wound, another wound, another wound.
Yeah.
And then, of course, in the environment, I was as well in IT. So there were literally just guys around me in their strong, competitive, maybe as well wounded masculinity. And I was like, okay, I have to buckle up.
Yeah.
I'm now this boss woman in a way, and that was just feeding my wounded masculinity.
Yeah.
And then it was screaming so loud at one day that I was like, I'm not happy, what is going on here? I'm so disbalanced, I don't know who I am. And then it was knocking at the door. It was like, Nadine, I mean, you're so feminine but you're not.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, there is something wrong with me. And I did not understand that we have masculine and feminine energies in our bodies and it's about alignment. And that's what yoga actually taught me. It's about the alignment of body, mind, and soul. And with that, it comes the energy part as well. And I was like, oh, wow,
Mm.
this is so interesting. So I was like, okay. But then it started that when you enter the spiritual bubble as well, you see so many women that are actually in their wounded femininity. And that's scary because they are like, oh wow, I don't want to plan anything anymore, I'm just flying, I don't know what's happening tomorrow,
And
I
it's
cannot tell you, I don't want to maybe meet you tomorrow, I will tell you tomorrow if we're gonna meet. I'm like,
And that's also really confusing. It was for me when I'm trying to figure out, well, what does a healthy feminine look like? And these are my role models. And there was
yeah.
just so much like polarity and resistance to that. And I was like, well, okay, well, clearly I'm not going to figure this out this way. There's got to be another
No,
way.
I'm not a friend of flakiness, For me, I'm an Aquarius, I'm loyal, I like to plan things out in a way, and this is okay. And for some of the women, it might work this, flowy, flowy all the time.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not just me, it's not me.
Yeah.
I have a strong masculine part and this is fine and I can use that. So
Yes.
I know it's the first thing you need to know what you actually need to thrive in your own personality and be authentic.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I love that, and again, can relate massively. So, when it comes to like the journey out of the wounds, like let's talk about kind of healing and recovery to some extent. Like, what does that look like? What things do perhaps our listeners need to start to become aware of within themselves? Because you did touch upon that, saying the first step is observing ourselves. So, tell us more about that, and then what's next?
Exactly. So the first thing I literally tuned into myself and said, okay, there is a misalignment in my energies, but where does that come from? And then I saw, okay, observing your patterns, you get to know, okay, there is wounded masculinity, femininity. What are the behaviors? Where do they actually come from? Why are you acting like that? What is being triggered inside of you that you are react like this? And you know, when was the last time when you are getting triggered like this, where not the last time, the first time ever when you were triggered like this, where did this come from? And then you have like this part of where did it start, the journey, and then you can do some inner healing, and it has a lot to do with shadow work, you know, embracing the parts of you that you reject because you think it's not good to be like that as you were taught. It's a lot about inner child work, as you are not embracing your inner child, the needs, what you really need and want. So it's tuning back in and literally being a lot in silence, meditating, breathing, asking you a lot of reflection questions that are really triggering yourself. It's uncomfortable. And that's as well when I have to say, it's not a journey that you normally do completely on your own, because I'm a coach and I can say that you can do a lot of coaching work by yourself. But when it got super uncomfortable, there is always the necessity of having another person that literally gives you the mirror.
Yeah.
The mirror of like, okay, now we're going to look deeper exactly here.
Yeah.
You as a coach, for example, or as a normal person, you would not go there because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I had coaches, I had mentors, and I still have,
Yeah.
because when I need to do some really strong work, I need someone to sit in front of me to ask me the uncomfortable questions and say, we're not going away now. We are looking exactly right now here.
And our subconscious is so smart that it will find loopholes even when you're working with a coach to try and get around it as well. So the coaches that coach coaches, I think are just like completely like expert in what they do. And like I'm very grateful. I've got a lot of coaches in my network that I've coached and they've coached me and such. And there are some that are just so fantastic. Like I can't get away with anything. As much as I will try, not intentionally, but I will go into this avoidant tendency, and they just know how to almost like pin you down in a compassionate and loving way that is necessary for you to actually have those breakthroughs. So I really am an advocate for working with someone. I think there is a huge amount that we can learn from being introspective, and from listening to podcasts and reading books, but there is nothing like having someone there by your side to just like, guide you.
And maybe one thing as well, if you are starting your healing journey, it is not about the amount of events that you're attending, like trying out meditation, breathwork, sound healing, going into plant medicine, whatever, and running from one point to the other. This is not the work. This is then just event hopping.
Yeah, exactly.
It
Bypassing.
yeah, bypassing literally. It is about the time in between that you have to take to really do the introspection and see, okay, that sound healing, for example, triggered something and I feel I'm really disbalanced from my feminine energy. So me asking, what can I do today that helps me get back into balance?
Yeah.
What is it? And then trying the things out and seeing what it does, but not always like, okay, I have to do this, I have to do that. And then this
Yeah.
is
And that's something that we see quite typically in this region, right? Being in the UAE, there it is a bit of a novelty when there's ice baths popping up and breathworks and this meditation and that healing and this shaman's in town, and it's like, okay, but what's your intention? Why are you going there? Where does this fit into the grander piece of who you are and where you are on your journey? And I think we forget that sometimes, and then we are at risk of falling into that instant gratification of, oh, I did this amazing weekend and I felt amazing after, but then give it a week or two and we're back into those old patterns. And then it's the illusion that, well, now I keep going on these events, now I keep going on these things, we get hooked on that and not on that deeper work. I think the more content and the more balanced you become, the less you are even drawn perhaps to all of the glitz and the shiny stuff. I think, you know, still for sure open to learning and understanding and this kind of stuff, but it's a different attitude, I think, towards it that happens. And I think there's a piece that's behind it, or at least it has been for me, at least.
It's exactly the same. I mean, I like going once in a while to an event here or there if it's calling me. But for me, it's as well, you know, it's not, don't overdo yourself. Your body cannot take that. It's too much, literally. You can't process that anymore.
Yeah.
If you, for example, would go from a plant medicine to a plant medicine 1 month after 1 month after 1 month, how can you process that? You could do that maybe for a while if you feel really the calling, but this is not, it should not be an addiction in a way, you know.
Exactly.
It's
There should be an integration phase,
exactly,
100%. Yeah.
yeah.
So with the going back to the masculine feminine energy piece, what is some of the first things people can lean into that maybe they'll recognize that they're activating perhaps their feminine or their masculine? So I know that when we observe ourselves and we observe the patterns, like you've said, and you've also said, like, then try different things. But what are the signs and the signals to say, right, I've got a wounded masculine energy here. How do I then know that I'm on the right track as I'm healing that?
Yeah, so for example, healing a healed masculine energy is represented by showing up in a responsible way. I'm taking action, but I'm as well doing the work, and that in a consistent matter of time. I'm focused and I'm not trying out this, that. And this could be the healing thing, or it could be as well job situation. I'm trying out this, that. No, I'm really asking myself, where do I want to put my energy in? And I'm focusing that. Yep. So it's about focus, a healthy focus. Mm-hmm. It gives you as well, when you're reaching the state of clarity, yep. For example, you have goals, and this should be good, you know, healthy goals are good. It's not that you should not have goals or a vision. That's not meant. It's just if you are just chasing and running after goal, that's not a good thing. But having clarity about where would you like to go and what could be the next steps in a way, a healthy planning mode is always good. Yeah. Being supportive as well, supportive to your environment, you know, being helping, but as well supportive to yourself. Yeah. Understanding what are your needs, what are your desires, what are your boundaries is something masculine as well, that you are understanding. Yeah. What is it actually that you can help yourself with? Being aware in a good way. Yeah. And having as well the courage to step out once in a while of your comfort zone. Yeah. That means like not staying in your job if you're super unhappy and just blaming everybody else that I'm so miserable. No, it's more like, okay, I'm unhappy. What steps could I take to get me out of this situation? It doesn't mean that you have to be your own boss or anything. Not everybody is meant for that, okay? But it means like, okay, what could be the next steps for me to get out of my situation? And then seeing what comes through and then taking action. Taking action in a healthy way. This is definitely something that I can see, okay, I'm putting into my healthy masculine side, and this is good. Yeah. On the feminine side, it is tuning into your feelings, understanding your emotions as we are human beings and we have emotions, seeing, why am I right now so happy? Why am I right now so sad? What did trigger me in that kind of way? Where do I feel my sadness? Yeah. Where does that come from? And what can I do for myself? And how can I let this sadness flow through my body? Flowing. Yeah. Flowing is a lot of feminine, healthy energy, flowing emotions, flowing energy, but in this way of understanding and letting it pass. So it's showing kindness to yourself, not blaming yourself of, you're sad now? Oh my God.
This for me, like the way you're saying this, like it just sounds so easy, right? And I know our listeners will be thinking, okay, it was easy for you to say, right? Because you've been there and you've done it. But I mean, for me, just understanding my emotions and being able to feel them inside of my body, oh my gosh, that can sometimes still be a work in progress. And I recognize, I mean, that masculine again, it's time to pull it back, reconnect again. It's a lot easier for me to do that now, but it's still, to this day, I have to kind of like rein it in a little bit and kind of come back to base. And it just sounds so easy. So just so for any of our listeners listening to this, it isn't necessarily going to be like you take a course and suddenly you can do it, or you listen to a podcast, suddenly you do it. It takes work, because these are old patterns that are being reinforced so deeply that it can take time. So be compassionate with yourself.
As I mentioned, I've been on this journey for quite some years now, and it started with yoga. Yoga brought me literally back into my body, in my awareness as well, what is kind of like stuck. I understood about the energy system, and then I was like, okay, from here, I understand now what it might need more. Then I was going into meditation, and I was like, oh, this is stillness. This is how I can calm my thoughts that are so productive and running all the time. Okay, then I understood breathing. Consciously breathing is another tool that can really help you calming down your system and just being able to feel as well, because you're first just understanding, okay, with breathing you can help yourself. And that was literally as well something, as I was anorexic when I was young, and I understood one part of me, when I kind of like exited that feeling of needing to throw up, was through breathing. When I focused on my breath, I didn't have the need of throwing up anymore. And that was years before I started yoga, where I learned about conscious breathing, how much that can help our system to thrive. So breath was really important for me to understand, okay, this is something how I can tune back into myself. Then I did a lot of trainings, like I went into Tantra to understand how much trauma is actually embodied in our parts that we cannot get rid of with mental work. It's sometimes you have to do some body work, somatic release therapy, to be able to release some parts that are literally stuck. And that is another thing. And then I went to so many things just to see as well what works for my body, because what I'm just right now saying what worked for me is not necessarily working for you.
Exactly.
So it is important to find your own way of coping, your own way of healing, and then you'll see the results.
Definitely. And I think the principle behind what you've said there around like body work is important. So just to highlight, like I think it's really important that everybody has essentially almost like a tool, or they start to understand what works for them when it comes to the mental, when it comes to the emotion, when it comes to body work. I do think everybody should have almost like an anchor for each of those elements. They all do obviously work intertwined, but for some people it's like, okay, well, journaling's the answer then, or thought work is the answer to everything. It's like, well, no, because actually it all works together and we have to pay attention to that. So I really appreciate you sharing that, because I think that's really important. So going back to the feminine energy piece, so you said there, obviously connecting with emotions, being kind to yourself, these obviously help the essence of flow, which is very much feminine energy. Is there anything else there?
Tuning into your intuition, because especially as a woman, we have a really strong intuition. And I always was gifted with that, but I was really good in denying it, to disconnect. So try to listen to your inner gut feeling, maybe, what it says, because we all normally get really easily an answer, yes or no. And I just faced that situation as well, as I still have days where I think I'm so disconnected, I don't understand myself anymore. So it's a constant journey. Sometimes you go 3 steps ahead, 1 back, and it's normal, you know. So just don't give up. Keep on going. So the intuition is really important. As for example, I had to make a decision 3 days ago about my old apartment. Am I going back to my old apartment, or am I looking for something new? And it was like, okay, there is the known of my old apartment with all the conditions, and there is the unknown. I don't know. what is out there yet, because as you know, in the UAE, the market is so quick. You can't just find a new place when you literally arrive. This
Yeah.
is for a German, really not understandable. And in Germany, it's like literally looking for something 3 months before you move
Yeah,
out. And
exactly.
here
The
come
week.
and then we can see and then we're gonna find you something. So it's like, okay, having this, okay, I know the old and there is the new possibility that you don't know what's gonna happen.
Yep,
Just
exactly.
people telling you, don't worry about it, we're gonna solve that. So I was like, okay, I have to make a decision.
Yep.
And this is a lot with surrender and trust, which is the healthy feminine as well.
Yep.
So I was like, okay, I could always go back to my old life in a way because I loved it in a way, but I had the intention of moving out there. And the intuition said, yeah, it's time for a change. But then maybe it's the easy way, you know, because you don't know what's going to happen here.
Yep.
So I tuned into myself and I had a big headache for one day. I literally said, oh gosh, what should I do? What should I do? What should I do? And then I had such a big intuition saying me, Nadine, no, you have to go this side.
Yeah.
Trust the universe that something is going to come up because this year is about letting go of the old things. You want to be someone else. You want to evolve. You want to evolve into a higher frequency. So do the work. Be the change. Don't wait for the change. Be the change.
Yep.
I was like, okay. So I told the old landlord, I'm not going to move back. I'm trusting the universe. And that's where we are right now.
I love that so much because that again, I can really resonate with it. Like this, and I'm happy that you brought out the word trust when you were talking about intuition, because often what I hear from a lot of people is very common is, well, how do I know I can trust my intuition? It's like, you'll know. Like, it's like, how else do you explain? You'll just know because you'll feel it. But we have to be open, and we also almost have to, I believe, and maybe I'm wrong here, or maybe there's still something else for me to learn, is that when I feel safe, at least, it's a lot easier for me to surrender. And the unknown used to be unsafe, but I've learned now that actually the unknown is the safest thing because it's unknown, right? We know that something is going to change, right? So it's a lot easier for me to trust in that. And I think a good mental shift for me that happened, particularly around like masculine and feminine energy, and I think with surrender, was going from this notion that I had to make life happen, right? And it was like, it's up to me to do it, it's on my shoulders, right? It's my responsibility to create the life I want. And I do believe we need to take action in a resourceful way, like described in the healthy masculine. But I went from thinking that I had to create it all to, and almost forcing it to allowing it to unfold. So instead of trying to unfold the future and trying to unfold it, I allow it to unfold and just respond to how it unfolds. And life is so much easier. Like, it's unbelievable how much easier it is. But that shift mentally helped me, is that I'm not trying to unfold it. I just need to respond to how it unfolds. And that's it. Like, if I can just trust that and lean into that belief and that understanding more and more, the easier everything becomes, and it becomes more effortless. And then I flow more, which then means I'm more in my healthy feminine. That's something that's helped for me, at least. Is there another like way to think about that based on your experience?
No, I just would like to add something what you just mentioned with the it gets so easier if you trust and surrender to something and you just believe that the unknown is just gonna happen.
Yeah,
And there is the thing, even the known, is that so safe? I
exactly.
don't think that it's safe, you
It's the
know. For now, you think it's safe, but you don't know what's going to happen after that. If
exactly.
I, for example, go back to my old apartment, I know this, but maybe next week there is a big damage or anything happening or something else happens and I'm not happy there anymore. And
Yeah,
that was not safe and
yeah,
I have to move out. Same with the job situation or anything else, you know. The known is not always the secure or safe stuff. Like my
no,
father said, go to a job and be a manager. This is
yeah.
safe. It's not safe. You can be fired every day.
It's so
It's not.
funny. I used a similar example in an earlier conversation about when I left the role that I was in when I was working for a big commercial fitness chain here in the UAE. I was leaving to set up my own business, and a colleague of mine who I love dearly, he turned around to me and said, "But it's a bit of a risk, isn't it?" And I'm like, well, it's more of a risk to stay, isn't it? Like I'm seeing my future now as being almost limitless, right? And anything's possible. But I know for sure that if I stay, it's going to be this way, more or less, right? Because there's already so much structure in play. There's already so much that is going to be predictable for at least the next year. And I already knew how I felt. So it was like, actually, it's more scary for me to stay where I am than it is for me to go. So I think, but like you said, like we have to be attuned. We have to tune into ourselves to be able to access those understandings and that.
And even when you can tune in and you feel this intuition,
Mm.
there might be still going on this roller coaster in your head. I observed myself 2 days ago when I made this decision, and I was so much in my head that I literally reached out to a couple of men and
Mm.
women to just tell them, I have to make a decision. I don't know what to do right now. So please give me just your perspective and drop it on me because I right now feel like I'm not clear in my head. And I had a really good friend of mine telling me, Nadine, you know what? Just make a decision and don't let this roller coaster continue. Why are you worrying so much about it? I
Yeah.
can sense that you need a change, then just embrace it.
Yeah.
Make the decision and enjoy your last week in Germany and then return. All
Yeah.
will be fine. I was like, you're actually right with that, you know? So I'm like, whoa, this is me being in this, you know, I have to be there and this has to work out. And I don't know, I feel
Gotta make it
uncomfortable
happen.
because it's not clear. And it's like, okay, good, breathe and just make it. And now I made the decision, I'm fine with it. And it's gonna work out. It's gonna work out. And I see it so much with a lot of female friends of mine that are really tuned into their intuition and they really trust to the universe that the universe takes care of us.
Yep.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And I can tell you, I'm not always there yet, but because I'm not so much in my feminine flowiness all the
Yep.
time. I
Yep.
love to be sometimes this, you know, I plan and I
Yep.
create. That's maybe as well why I'm so good in holding spaces,
Yep.
because this is a good, healthy masculine quality as well. Secure, protection. I
Yep.
can give this to women, you know, in a space where they can just feel like, oh, wow.
Yep.
I heard women tell me, you have so much motherly energy.
Mm.
And I'm like, wow, thank you so much for that. You know, I love being able to give you some soothing in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so it's so profound, isn't it, when you start to touch and feel and experience this. I think it's such a gift to be able to lean into this awareness and into the feeling that you get when you start to be aware of both your masculine and feminine energy, whether it's wounded or not, because it's still a superpower in some way, shape, or form. We just need to know how to channel it and to leverage it. I know that I will probably always be more masculine energy dominated, right? And that's okay. I'm happy with that. I love the what it does for my business. I love what it does for our clients. But I also know when I need to change up that tempo a little bit when it comes to my relationships, right? There was a period of time where I did not know how to do that. Right. And then yeah, exactly, right. And it's fascinating because being a fly on the wall, which essentially we are, right, when we coach to some extent, it's you get to hear things and you just like, oh, like there's such something so beautiful on its way for you, but you can't always put it into words. And I think the energy piece is like that when it comes to feminine and masculine energy. It's something that has to be felt. I think we can consciously make steps towards like finding that balance, like in all the ways that you've described and shared. But I think when you start to feel it, that's when I think you get almost a bit incentivized to continue leaning into it. Because one thing I have noticed, and I'm curious to know if you've noticed this as well, is for a lot of women, um sometimes they can be worried about losing their assertiveness. And I ask you this specifically because I see it a lot in female leaders. If they step into more of their feminine energy, are they going to lose that sense of themselves? And that's something that brings them safety, right? And security. And they do like that side of themselves and they don't want to lose it. But again, is that fear driven, coming from a place of lack mindset?
Exactly. That's first of all, it's fear driven because you think you're lacking something. And then on the other side, of course, it is still about the balance. You should not go from this wounded masculinity to the wounded feminine side
Yep.
of being flaky and
Yep.
just flying around like a bird.
Yep.
No, this is not. You can still be very in your masculine energy and just embracing the feminine treats of tuning into your emotions, letting your creativity out as well, being kind to yourself, do a lot of self-care, for example, take time for yourself. This is a very important point as well.
Yep.
Taking time for yourself. I see that, for example, right now in friends that I have here, just recently a female friend of mine who got a baby, 5 months old, and she literally told me, you know, Nadine, I'm living since 5 months literally just for the child, but I know why I do it, because I want him to thrive and it's okay for me. But I said to her, you know, I totally understand you and this is amazing. I'm not a mother yet, but I'm just seeing that how can you use all your energy for this little child and help this child if you basically have no energy left?
Exactly.
So maybe you should ask yourself, just what could you do, even as little as it is, to be able to regain a little bit of your charge, of your battery, you know? So she asked herself that and she said, you're right, actually. I will ask my husband to take care of the child every day for 1 hour so that I have a bit of self-care routine. I'm drinking a cacao, I'm having a bath, I do whatever helps me to just get back into my energy, because then I can even serve better.
Yep.
And I'm like, yeah.
Exactly.
And this is as well if you have a super stressful job.
Yep.
If you're just running for the job and you're just in the job, you're forgetting yourself. How can you perform in your job when you don't have energy for yourself anymore? And I hear that often in the corporates. They say, yeah, but I cannot take this time for myself. Yeah, but then I say, okay, if you're not understanding the concept of breaks, how important that is for recharging. We are not machines. Exactly. We need some time. And even if it's just 3 minutes in front of your desk, breathing and tuning into your, what am I feeling right now? What do I need? Do I need a coffee? Do I need a tea? Whatever.
Yep.
And you give that to yourself. How is it that you are just running from one meeting to another, emails, you are burning out. And this is what I see a lot in the UAE. A lot of, especially women, are burning out at the moment.
Yeah, 100%.
Because they are taken advantage of, because they're ambitious. They want to achieve something, but they are draining.
Yeah. And that has a massive impact on identity, right? Even the example you use with your friend, the new mum, and the high octane professional that's burning out, right? It's the same idea and the same scope that then all affects how we show up, not just in productivity or in the energy, but in our own identity and how we see ourselves. Because if you do it for long enough, that's when disaster strikes, right? That's when we get completely burned out and we don't know why we're even here on the planet, you know. And that's when parents get to a point where their kids leave home and suddenly like, well, who am I without my kids? And we can prevent that if we act now. And I know sometimes it's so easy to say it than to do it, but it is possible. And like you said, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes is something, right? And if we don't get it now, we are going to pay the price later. I'm convinced of it. Yeah. Nadine, thank you so much for your insights. I really love this conversation. I am curious to know, before we wrap up, is there anything else that you feel like our listeners really need to hear, or like what are the key nuggets maybe that you really want them to take away from what you've already said?
So maybe one more thing, when they want to tune more into their energies, what they could do if they sense that there is some wounded masculinity inside of them, what they could do is starting to make clear visions and set clear goals. Invest some time into sports activities, do some gym work, whatever, ice bath sessions or anything, you know, that's triggering the masculine side. And embracing like little challenges, you know, do something what you never did before. And it doesn't have to be the big thing. It could be something really small that you always wanted to try out, but you were like, I don't know. So just go for it, you know, do something little. And in the feminine side, I would say, if you are drawn towards dancing, move. Move, that brings you into feminine flow energy. If you like drawing, draw. If you want to play music, play music. Embrace as well your vulnerability. Share what is really going on with you. You don't have to hide. We don't have to put on a mask. It is okay. Look out for safe spaces. Gather with people that are like-minded, where you can literally share your thoughts, your feelings, your whatever comes up. And then on the other side, do some mindful practices like meditation, yoga, whatever self-care rituals. Have a date on your own, take yourself out for dinner, have a beautiful bath, whatever, this is really helping out. And at the end, if we're honest, I was talking about masculine and feminine energies, but if we are understanding the whole concept, there is just one energy.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if you understood that, then you're not thinking, oh my God, I'm more in my masculine, I'm more in my feminine. It's just about the healthy way of balancing your own energy. It doesn't matter if you're masculine or feminine. It is just one energy stream. And if you manage that to align yourself, then you did the job, and then you can flow in the universe.
I love that so much. That's the perfect way to end this conversation. However, there is another question that's popped into my mind that I would love to ask you, because I'm curious to know your thoughts on it. Is there a link from your perspective between the all or nothing mentality and masculine and feminine energy?
All or nothing, like black or white.
Yeah, so when something's like, okay, well, I've got to go all in. I can't just do like this one little thing. I've got to go all in, or I don't do anything. Do you know what I mean by that mindset?
Yeah, I get, but that's acting exactly from the wounded masculine. I have to do it either completely or not at all.
Yeah.
I get that. In some ways, that could be okay and healthy. I'm, for example, if I'm into a relationship, I'm either fully in or fully out. There is no in between for me, because everything else is flakiness. But like this being of like, I'm now doing the energy work, I'm either completely in or completely out. You can start with small steps. It doesn't have to be this, I jump out of my corporate job and I am now my own entrepreneur and whatever. So it's not right or wrong, left or right, black or white, sun and moon. Find your balance. Find the fitting way for you. For someone else, it might have to be very extreme, because this person might tend to be more in the masculine side, which is fine. But there might be some other ways for you that are working way better. Find your path.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for that insight, because that's something I definitely used to have that mindset a lot, and it was finding that center point that's worked well for me to be able to manage that. But it's something very, very common when we look at high performers. It's that mindset, right? And it's that perfectionism in any endeavor, whatever that looks like. And that, it definitely comes from a wounded place, because then the consequence of that becomes identity related, highly emotional, and that's when it's the sign that it's unhealthy, right? And it's an unhealthy wound, which makes sense. Nice food for thought. Thank you so much, Nadine. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. All of the links as to where our listeners can find you will be in the show notes. But do you want to just let everyone know perhaps where you are? Just let them know. Maybe Instagram, is that where you're most active?
Yeah, so on Instagram, you find me Nadine Schwarz _official, or you find it on my Sacred Sisterhood. That's my community for women in Dubai. And the other things you're gonna find in the show notes. I'm happy to help. If you want to reach out to me as a woman, you're finding your balance and you're struggling with that, I'm here. It's just for me, if I can help one more soul to evolve, to elevate their frequency, this is already why I'm here on earth,
Well, you've already done that today for sure with this episode. So thank you so much for being here. Enjoy the rest of your time in Germany, and good luck with your move when you come back to Dubai.
If you enjoyed this episode and you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode.
Then share it with a friend who you think might benefit.
Spread the word. That's how we're going to impact the world, by helping each other.
We appreciate you so much, and as always, unconditional love and wellness to you.